Hello, my name is Mauricio Gonzalez, and today I will tell you some things you need to know to carry on a negotiation with a Mexican person. First of all, talking about their culture, Mexicans normally are proud of their country and nationality, and they are very attached to their beliefs. They are people who cares about their families and very working people. Speaking of religion, 70% of their populations practice the Catholicism. Regarding education, this is composed of 7 levels that are preschool, elementary school, junior high, high school, university, master's degrees, and doctorate. Putting this into numbers, we searched that 77% of the population of 3 years and older doesn't have any type of scholarity. The 5% of the population of 3 years and older finish the preschool. The 28% of the population of 3 years and older finish elementary school. The 25% of population of 3 years and older conclude junior high. The 19% of the population of 3 years and older graduated from high school. The 14% of the population got a university degree, and only the 2% of the population achieved a postgraduate title, either master's or doctorate. Also, the 5.5% of the population 6 years and older are illiterate. Mexico of respect, patience, and empathy are required. To adapt to the diversity in Mexico in a negotiation among Mexicans, it is very usual to bring a little present to the other party as a symbol of gratitude for the time and good faith. It is common to bring a typical candy of the region, small handicrafts, or some detail that distinguish the region of the negotiator. Illiterate. Mexico's official language is Spanish, with more of the 90% of their population speaking Spanish. In Mexico, social classes are divided in 3. That are higher class with the 2% of the population, middle class with the 39% of the population, and lower class with the 59% of the population, that is the majority. In Mexico, materialistic culture consists in architectural heritage, for example, El Ángel de la Independencia, archaeological heritage like Chichen Itza, artistical, historical, and industrial heritage, and also natural heritage like the jungle, the desert, the Mexican flora, the Mexican fauna. Now, I'm going to talk about if the negotiation is carried on between two Mexicans, it will be easier than having a negotiation with a foreigner in other country. But we have to consider that Mexico is a pretty big country, thus it has a huge cultural diversity. Therefore, you have to consider different aspects. For example, if a negotiation will be made with a person from the south, it is necessary to know that they are calmer people and sometimes slower when speaking. It is necessary to have patience also if the person is indigenous. Respect for their culture and customs must be maintained. If the negotiation is carried on with a person from the north, you may think that he is in a bad mood or angry, but no. In the north, people tend to have a more beaten accent, but they are usually very friendly and confident people. If a Mexican enters into a negotiation with a person of the capital, it should be considered that not in all cases, but often they have a feeling of superiority compared to the people of the rest of their republic. But as in any negotiation, respect, patience, and empathy are.
Now I'm going to talk about the country of Japan. The Japanese religious tradition is made of several components, including Shinto, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Religion in Japan is mostly a mishmash of ideas from Shintoism and Buddhism. While Buddhism was important from the mainland in the 6th century, Shinto is as old as the Japanese culture. Religion in Japan is mostly considered a moral code and a way of living. Japanese religion is also private, kind of like a family affair. It is separate from the state. There are no religious prayers or symbols in schools. The majority of Japanese do not worship regularly or claim to be religious. Religion does not play a big role in the everyday life of most Japanese people today. Japanese culture is so rich because traditions have been passed down through generations with little change. A framework of hierarchy and skill-based teaching are melded into society. Knowledge seamlessly flows from old to young and into the future. In Japan, some of the core values are thinking of others, doing your best, not giving up, respecting your elders, knowing your role, and working in a group. These concepts are taught explicitly and implicitly from nursery school into the working world. The Japanese people give much regard to the importance of time and its value in productivity. They value punctuality very much to the point that employees are expected to arrive at least 15 minutes before their call time. Harmony, order, and self-development are three of the most important values that underlie Japanese social interactions. Japanese study comprises a set of ancient ideas that include wabi, sabi, and yugen. These ideals and others underpin much of Japanese culture and aesthetic norms of what is considered tasteful or beautiful. Japan is widely recognized as a vertically structured, group-oriented society. The rights of individuals take second place to harmonious groups functioning, so they come first. Traditionally, Confucian ethics encourage a respect for authority, whether that of the state, the employer, or the family. Age and gender differences also were marked through both language and behavioral patterns. Women traditionally were expected to pay respect first to their parents, then to their husbands, and finally, in later lives, to their sons. But nowadays, that hierarchy is no longer as enforced, although it is still very evident in both language and interpersonal behavior. The Japanese school system primarily consists of 6 years elementary school, and 3-year junior high school, and 3-year high schools. These are followed by 2 or 3-year junior colleges and some 4-year colleges. Compulsory education lasts for 9 years through elementary to junior high school. The school exchanges during Japan educational travel are mainly implemented in junior high and high school. Education in Japan is compulsory at the elementary and lower secondary levels. Most students attend public schools through the lower secondary level, but private education is popular at the upper secondary and university levels. Education prior to elementary school is provided at kindergarten and daycare systems. If you are a Mexican person trying to do business with a Japanese enterprise or just Japanese businesswoman, you should know that Japan is a more relationship-oriented culture than other countries like, United States, especially when it comes to doing business. Japanese want to know and trust someone before they do business with them, and relationships are usually developed through informal social gatherings and generally involves a big amount of time of eating and drinking, which is not usually done in business. The culture shock that happens in Japan as a non-Japanese person is pretty common. Japan is a country with a big history and a strict traditional value. Also, it has a new modern culture that many countries don't have. When you go there as a business person doing business with someone you don't know, someone Japanese, you should try to recognize that you're experiencing a culture shock, and should realize that, and realizing that you are dealing through a culture shock will help you deal with it better. It can overcome when you accept and adapt the foreign culture that you're in. And you should also learn as much as possible about your destination, in this case Japan. And as you learn and become more open-minded, it is easier to understand differences and see things from a different perspective and do business in a more positive way.
Hi, I'm going to talk about negotiating in USA being Mexican. A huge aspect you should consider is culture. The language they speak is obviously English, and about 71% are Christian religion and 6% are non-Christian religions. They don't have the idea that being formal is having short hair or present with a suit. They have important dates, which are Memorial Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and some more. Some aspects you should consider when negotiating is make some small reunions or phone calls before proposing the business. Always promote equity and justice. Why? Because these are important values for them. Always be constructive and share information between the negotiators. An important aspect is planification and punctuality. Americans are so punctual and planify their meetings with time. In USA, it's a country of opportunities, and you have the opportunity to make a business even if there are competitors. Because USA population is huge, but an important advantage and always be is have technology.
British culture per se, it's very professional and very polite. You know, they speak, they're well spoken or tend to have a lot of manners and mannerism per se when speaking, which I think is one of the biggest differences from us in Mexico and in the UK, or in this case England. Since over here we tend to do a bit more colloquial or maybe more like relaxed type of deal. However, over there they're very professional in how they conduct business. The main religion in England is Christianity, right? In the 15th century, the King of England, Henry VIII, wanted to annul his marriage with his then wife. The Pope at that time didn't allow him to, so he created the Church of England, the one that's right now the biggest one in England. It's essentially the same thing as the Roman Catholic Church. It's just Protestant for a bit. There's also a big portion of Islam, or Muslims in this case, since a lot of immigrants are from that religion, right? There's also a lot of Hindi people, being considered the third biggest religion in that country at this point. Also, the education system in the UK, it's pretty much the same thing that we have over here in Mexico. It's divided into 4 parts: primary school, or primary education, secondary education, further education, and higher education. So it's kindergarten, and then just primary school, high school, and college, right? Also, it is legally, it is illegal for kids from ages 5 to 16 to not to attend school. Doesn't matter if you're rich, if you're poor, doesn't matter, you have to attend school between those ages. It's also the society, or the people in England, it's pretty much multicultural. Since in the 1800s they were at the pinnacle of their power. They had big influence all over around the world. And nowadays, since they're not the power they once were, right? So, but yeah, their economy is still pretty solid. So that's the reason why a lot of people are immigrating over there, right? So there's a lot of cultural diversity in this case. It's a vast diversity of culture, and for instance, the British culture per se, it's very professional and very polite. You know, they speak, they're well spoken, or tend to have a lot of manners and mannerism per se when speaking, which I think is one of the biggest differences from us in Mexico. And
okay, now talking about the education system, there are in total 4 levels of education, which are divided in the first, which can be taken as a primary school in Mexico. Then the secondary level, the secondary superior level,
and the fourth one and last one is going to be the career one, where they specialize in some special topic, and that's what they are mostly going to work in the future. And then we can talk about the materialistic culture. They have a lot of humanity patrimonies and architectonic structures, just like the National Park of Kakadu and the National Park of Ulrucata. And they have the architectonic buildings. Could be the Galería de Arte from Sydney and the San Pablo, the Catedral de San Pablo. Okay, good morning, how are you? My name is Eduardo Garcia, and today we're going to talk about the Australian culture and the negotiating culture. What do you need as a Mexican to learn and take in mind in order to negotiate with an Australian? We can start by saying that in Australia there is about 24.9 million people. Moving on to the attitudes and beliefs of the Australian people. Basically, they are really relaxed people. They tend to be really relaxed. It doesn't mean they do not work or they have a bad working culture, but that's how they are. They just relax in order to think about the negotiation, and to have a successful negotiation. That's how they see it. And then moving on to the religion. When talking about religion, most of the people are Christian, about 52% of the people. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to talk about the language they use to communicate in Australia, which is English. Then what we have here is how they socially are organized. They're really open-minded and they are really equal between them, so they do not separate themselves from characteristics like economy and social level and stuff like that. So there's no social organization, if you want to say like that, from separation from characteristics like that. And then we have their conduct when negotiating. These Australian people are really modest. They do not like the other participant of the negotiation to be being like, I'm the one and I'm the biggest negotiator here. And basically they don't like the people to magnify themselves. They are really, really simple when talking about the negotiation. They like to be really inside and do not take extra time talking about the negotiation, to speak clearly the characteristics and in terms of the business, and that's it. And where they actually want to take time is when taking the decision. So that's where the Mexicans should be really slow the pace in order to get to a successful negotiation with them. They have to be really clear with the characteristics of what they want in order for them to be okay with the negotiation and to be successful with it, and that's it.
Of what it is modern racism, right? However, right now South Africa is culturally booming since they have plenty of industries and labor, right? The thing here is that it's very cheap labor, since it's the African people, South African people, or really all African people, have been terribly mismanaged by corrupt politicians and just white bad people, right? However, I believe that this specifically, it's a pretty great way for Mexican businessmen or businesswomen to connect to in South Africa. The religion itself, it's 80% Christians, and then so on and so forth, Muslim, Hindus, and Jewish people. The language that they speak, remember that they were conquered by the UK at some point, and a lot of people emigrated from the northern region of Europe down to South Africa, right? Remember, Africa, the big continent, South Africa, it's at the very, very bottom. It says it on the net. However, yeah, I mean, the languages that they speak the most is Afrikaans, which is a kind of broken English type of deal. English and Zulu, right? Also, South Africa has a 3-tier system of education, starting with primary school, then high school, and then tertiary education, which is essentially kind of university or like a technical kind of education, right? Essentially, South Africa, they have a vast majority of cultural differences. However, I mean, there's a little tribes and there's little very much public information. Remember, it's a big country. However, there's not a lot of people over there. I believe it's around 13 million people. There's a little tribes and there's little very much public information. Remember, it's a big country. However, there's not a lot of people over there. I believe it's around 13 million people right now. And yeah, I mean, it is still very vast in that aspect. However, the apartheid, which was the essentially segregation laws between white people and black people or colored people, it started in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and was all the way up to 1992. Not that far from now. And yeah, I mean, essentially it treated the black people like slaves. They didn't let them have much of an education. They didn't let them run for public positions. They essentially were mistreated in their own country, and that is very sad. However, now that apartheid has been eradicated, I mean, there's still a lot of different cultural shocks that they may encounter. What it is modern